welcome to Plugged In. I'm Greta Van Susteren, and each week at this time, Plugged In will focus on an aspect of U.S. policy, questioning those who make and shape policy, and of course you'll hear various opinions about that policy. And by being plugged in, you will have an opportunity to speak up and get involved. We are live on Facebook at Voice of America, and we want your comments and questions. Today we look at religious freedom. It is part of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It guarantees the freedom to practice any religion or no religion. It forbids the U.S. government from regulating or restricting anyone's religious practices. Nor can the government favor any religion over another. But there are some American religious figures who transcend the culture. The Reverend Billy Graham was one of those figures, bringing evangelical Christianity into the mainstream of American life and to flocks of followers around the world. VOA's Bill Gallo looks at Reverend Graham's global impact.
There's a peace and a fulfillment.
He was known as America's pastor, but Billy Graham left a legacy around the world, preaching on every continent except Antarctica.
I say to you as Christians today, love one another.
Graham spoke out against communism before the fall of the Soviet Union and against apartheid in South Africa.
Christianity is not a white man's religion, and don't let anybody ever tell you that it's white or black. Christ belongs to all people.
He went behind the Iron Curtain to preach when it wasn't popular. He preached in North Korea. He went around the world, places that a lot of people didn't want him to go, but he kept going because he had a singular message, and that was to share the good news of the gospel.
But Graham leaves behind a complicated legacy. When anti-Semitic comments came to light, as transcripts of conversations with Richard Nixon surfaced, Graham was promptly and deeply apologetic. A social conservative, he opposed abortion and same-sex marriage. In 2012, Graham spoke out against gay marriage in North Carolina. That message has been furthered by his son, Franklin Graham, who now heads his international ministry. Bill Gallo, VOA News, Washington.
The United States is among the majority of countries with no state religion. A survey by Pew Research shows 42% of countries either have an official or preferred religion. There are 10 countries that are hostile or restrictive to religion. One of those countries is Vietnam. In 2011, Pastor Nguyen Quang Trinh was sentenced to 11 years in prison for undermining Vietnam's national solidarity through his ministry. After 6 years in prison, he was released on the condition that he leave the country. Pastor Trinh now lives in the United States. VOA's Vietnamese service caught up to him in California.
Xin kính chào mục sư Nguyễn Công Chính. Đài VOA hân hạnh được tiếp chuyện ông và xin ông trả lời một vài câu hỏi. Thứ nhất là tại sao chính quyền Việt Nam bỏ tù ông? Có phải vì lý do tôn giáo không?
Dạ thưa anh và quý thính giả Đài Tiếng Nói Hoa Kỳ. Chính phủ Việt Nam bỏ tù tôi là vì lý do tôn giáo và nhân quyền. Dạ.
Vâng, chính quyền Việt Nam có khi nào đòi ông đổi đạo hoặc bỏ đạo không?
Chính sách chính phủ Việt Nam ở đây đó là muốn kiểm soát tôn giáo và buộc các cái nhóm tôn giáo đó phải nằm trong cái hệ thống kiểm soát của nhà nước Việt Nam. Và với bản thân tôi thì không chấp nhận. Vì giữa tôn giáo và chính quyền thì hai cái lĩnh vực khác nhau. Cho nên chúng tôi không chấp nhận, vì lý do đó mà tôi bị đàn áp suốt 27 năm.
Vâng, ông bị cầm tù trong bao lâu? Và xin ông chia sẻ một ít ký ức trong thời gian ông ở tù.
Dạ, theo bản án thì tôi bị cầm tù 11 năm. Họ cáo buộc là điều 87 tội phá hoại chính sách đoàn kết. Trong đó có 4 điều mà tôi yêu cầu họ trưng dẫn chứng cứ thì không có chứng cứ. Và trong 11 năm thì tôi được ở trong tù là 6 năm 4 tháng và tôi được chuyển 3 trại giam. Cho nên cái đời sống người tù đó rất khắc nghiệt đối với một cái đất nước độc tài như Cộng sản. Nó không chỉ riêng ở Việt Nam mà một số nước Cộng sản khác cũng như vậy. Cho nên cái đời sống của những tù nhân lương tâm tôn giáo và chính trị chúng tôi phải trả giá rất đắt cho vấn đề nhân quyền và tự do tôn giáo. Trong đó có những người cả một cuộc đời ở trong tù và không có được lập gia đình. Và những cái người tù nhân tôn giáo và chính trị, có những người như vậy hôn nhân bị tan vỡ khi họ đi tù. Như trường hợp của luật sư Lê Công Định, hoặc là anh Nguyễn Thanh Vân, hoặc là anh Văn Ngọc Hiếu, hoặc là anh Hoàng Văn Thân. Và nhiều người như vậy phải chết trong tù. Đó cái giá phải trả cho tự do tôn giáo và nhân quyền. Và bản thân tôi như vậy thì cũng đã bị đánh đập ở trong tù khi tôi cầu nguyện, bị tra tấn hành hạ, thậm chí họ cho tôi ăn những cái thức ăn rất độc hại và gần như siết chết. Đó. Và ngoài ra không phải là tôi bị hành hạ về thể xác và cả tinh thần, mà vợ con tôi cũng bị đánh đập, bị ngược đãi và bị khủng bố ở ngoài. Cho nên cái người tù tôn giáo và chính trị tại Việt Nam họ trả giá rất là đắt cho vấn đề tôn giáo và tự do.
Vậy thì hoàn cảnh của vợ ông, gia đình ông hiện tại ra sao ạ?
Dạ, tôi qua đây thì tôi cảm ơn chính phủ Hoa Kỳ và cảm ơn cộng đồng người Việt Nam tị nạn cộng sản khắp mọi nơi trên thế giới. Nhờ sự tác động và lên tiếng mạnh mẽ, cho nên gia đình chúng tôi và ngay bản thân tôi được phóng thích ra khỏi tù, và cả gia đình chúng tôi đến Hoa Kỳ định cư. Tuy nhiên vợ và con tôi bị khủng hoảng tinh thần, bị nhiều năm bị tra tấn, và bản thân tôi cũng vậy. Về trạng thái tâm lý và sức khỏe hiện bây giờ vẫn chưa ổn định. Dạ, vì những cái chấn thương tâm lý, và vấn đề này cần phải có thời gian. Dạ.
Xin ông cho biết là tại sao ông phải rời khỏi Việt Nam?
Tôi không phải rời khỏi Việt Nam, mà Hà Nội trục xuất tôi ra khỏi Việt Nam và cấm không cho tôi trở lại Việt Nam. Vâng.
Khi sang trên đất Hoa Kỳ thì ông thấy sự khác biệt nào về quyền tự do tôn giáo ở Hoa Kỳ và ở Việt Nam?
Dạ, tôi đến đất nước Hoa Kỳ. Đây là một xứ sở tự do về quyền tự do tôn giáo, và nói riêng và nói chung đó là các cái giá trị nhân quyền được tôn trọng. Và điều tôi mong muốn ở đây dân tộc Việt Nam làm sao có được những cái giá trị nhân quyền này. Chính vì điều đó và tôi và một số mục sư và nhiều anh em và nhiều tổ chức mới thành lập một cái ủy ban chống văn hóa tôn giáo vận để tiếp tục đấu tranh đòi tự do tôn giáo và nhân quyền cho dân tộc Việt Nam.
Như vậy thì tại sao tự do tôn giáo theo ông nó là điều quan trọng?
Dạ, tôn giáo là linh hồn của dân tộc. Và nếu dân tộc Việt Nam không có tôn giáo thì cái dân tộc đó dễ bị bại hoại về đạo đức, và kể cả về nhân cách và văn hóa và lịch sử. Cho nên tôn giáo một phần rất quan trọng trên cái đời sống của dân tộc Việt Nam. Dù ở Việt Nam hay là bất cứ dân tộc nào ở quốc gia nào cũng cần có tôn giáo. Yeah.
Để có quyền tự do tôn giáo hơn ở Việt Nam thì theo ông những thay đổi nào người ta phải thực hiện?
Và tôi nghĩ rằng cái chính sách Hoa Kỳ về mặt ngoại giao nên đưa Việt Nam vào cái danh sách CBC và áp dụng luật Magnitsky toàn cầu để trừng phạt. Vì trước cái năm 2004 khi Việt Nam nằm trong danh sách CBC thì cái cấp độ đàn áp tôn giáo ở mức độ thấp. Nhưng sau khi 2005 chính phủ Hoa Kỳ rút Việt Nam ra khỏi CBC thì cái mức độ đàn áp tôn giáo và vi phạm nhân quyền lên cấp độ cao và mất kiểm soát.
The U.S. Office of International Religious Freedom was established in 1998 to promote religious freedom as a core objective of U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. Ambassador at Large for Religious Freedom is former U.S. Senator and former Governor of Kansas, Sam Brownback. I asked him what the job is all about and why he wants to do it.
It's about religious freedom, and it's about taking, I think, the most important topic in the world and activating it and making it come to life for people. Too many people live in a repressive religious regime where they can't practice their faith the way they want to. We believe as Americans that this is a God-given right and you're entitled to it wherever you are in the world, and we're activating that.
How do you reconcile with certain situations, like take a country like Saudi Arabia, which you got to be a Muslim, and what if we don't agree? The United States, we say you ought to have freedom to choose. It shouldn't just be you shouldn't have a religion imposed upon you. What do we do?
Well, we put them on a special watch list, or we put them on a country of particular concern. We highlight what policies they're doing that pull away from that. We push them as hard as we possibly can. Now, there's a natural pushback that takes place in the system because our embassy in Saudi Arabia and other places say, oh, wait a minute. We got other equities that we're interested in here. But we push that you should provide for religious freedom in your country, and that applies to friend and foe alike. People and countries act in their own self-interest. So I think you have to go to the country and say, this is in your best interest to be religiously free. And we now have the studies that this will reduce terrorism in your nation if you allow religious freedom. And it's common sense discussion as well. If I tell you I am not going to let you practice your faith, I'm not going to let you do it. I want to force you to know, what will you do? For a lot of people that are religiously motivated, they're going to fight you. And they're going to find some way to fight you. Whereas if I invite you into the society and say, bring your ideas to the public square, they're going to participate in the process. And so I think we take those sorts of ideas to people, countries like Saudi Arabia, and say, this is for your good to do this.
What are you looking forward to doing in this job? When you accepted the nomination, what did you think, like, this is something I'd really like to do? What part of it?
Saving lives. I used to do this work when I was in the Senate, and we'd advocate for people that were in jail, and once in a while you could get somebody out of jail and out of country and literally save their life, and it was a great day. I would also, on a global basis, really like to see the gates fly open for religious freedom around the world. I so fundamentally believe that this is one of those rights that brings forth a number of other human rights. And I do think we're at a moment where you could see that start to take place. You've got administration interested in it. You've got now the studies that show that this is the right way to go. You've got I think an alignment, and a lot of people in Congress interested in this, that you really could see this religious freedom blossom around the world.
What do we do about the situation where we're at war with ISIS and they persecute the Yazidis? And so what do we do? I mean, the Yazidis, we need to protect them from the persecution, but they're displaced from their property. I mean, you have the intersection sort of the lofty goal of wanting to protect people's life, liberty, practice religion, but then we have situations where we have war.
It's a tough one, and I plan to go there. I've got a trip planned soon to go into that region in northern Iraq where the Yazidis and the Christians were persecuted, where there was a genocide against them that took place. And right now the focus is how do we rebuild the area and have it secure enough that the Yazidis and the Christians can move back in. The security is the first. And then rebuilding and demining the area is going to be a key part of it. But there's quite a focus on that right now.
Well, what do we do, though, about the situation where you take the burqa, where you can only see the women's eyes? And I think to myself, boy, I feel terrible for those women. But what do we do if the women want to practice that religion?
They're free to do it.
Free to do it.
Free to do it.
But how do we know? We've got a situation where they can't get educated in some parts of the world because of their religion.
Well, I mean, to me, we ought to, and we do as a government, push for there's a basic right to be able to learn and to be able to prosper yourself. Countries make their own decisions about things, but I mean, to me, a freedom of religion is something that really will help spawn the rest of these rights as well.
Well, you actually see that, I think, in the Myanmar situation, the Rohingya. Here you've got the Buddhists and the Myanmar military who have done ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya Muslims, pushed about 680,000 out of there to Bangladesh.
It's religious cleansing, too.
But it's religious and ethnic.
It is.
And so do we go back to imposing sanctions on Myanmar? Is that, I mean, how do we stop that?
Well, I mean, it's hard, but you have to start by calling it what it is. I mean, this is religious cleansing. I mean, it would not be happening were these people not Muslim. If they were Buddhist, in all likelihood, this would not be happening today. And I think you start by calling it out for what it is. And they may say, well, it's not really, or they don't deserve to be here, or this or that. I said, well, come on, guys, seriously, would you be doing this to them if they were Buddhist? Would you? And if they can't answer that one straight, then I think you start working, obviously, with education, with calling it out around the world. You move forward with the sanctions on people, and you put pressure on saying, we're not going to stand for this. And we don't care what religion it is. We're not going to stand for it. And we're going to call it out, and we're going to speak about it, and we're going to take actions.
Fewer Americans now identify themselves as Christians, while more Americans than ever do not identify with any religious organizations. The survey in 2014 by Pew Research still shows America as home to more Christians than any other country. 70% of Americans identify with some branch of Christianity. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the U.S., but less than 1% of the U.S. population identify as Muslim. We discussed the changing religious demographics in the United States and U.S. promotion of religious freedom around the world with Pastor Bob Fu, president of China Aid, and one of the leading voices supporting those persecuted in China on the basis of their faith. Pastor Fu joins us via Skype from Midland, Texas. Rabbi Jack Moline is president of Interfaith Alliance, which works to combat religious discrimination and protect civil rights of people from all religion. And as noticed, Rabbi Moline leads efforts to protect religion and government from each other. Ambassador Akbar Ahmed is a professor at American University School of International Service. He was Pakistan's ambassador to the United Kingdom and author of several books, including Journey into America, The Challenge of Islam. He's considered among the world's experts in contemporary Islam. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. First, let me go to you, Pastor. Recently, a Chinese civil rights lawyer went to the hospital and for a stomach problem, and he died there. And this was a man who had just before that been here in Washington at the National Prayer Breakfast and said that he felt threatened. Are you suspicious of his death, and are you suspicious it's somehow related to his representing people who are persecuted for practicing religion in China?
Yes, Granton, thank you for asking that question. It's a very sad and horrifying moment that Dr. Li Beiguang, who is really China's most courageous religious freedom defender and human rights lawyer, just suddenly died in the People's Liberation Army hospital after a few hours. And I was spending the whole week during the National Prayer Breakfast in February, from the February 5th to the 11th, and staying in the same hotel room with him. And he was fine. And all of a sudden, he was announced dead. And of course, we have already seen a worrisome record that the Chinese government had made similar, kind of type of situation, like the Nobel Peace Laureate, the only Chinese, Dr. Liu Xiaobo, was died, pronounced the same liver kind of cancer disease, and several others. So it seems we have every reason to be suspicious. This is another tragedy that the Communist Party didn't want him to leave.
Rabbi, where do you see the line in terms of when the United States, we have such a strong commitment to the First Amendment, freedom of religion in our Constitution, but where is the line when we try to use diplomacy to try to change, China's persecution or other nations' persecution of religion? Where do you draw that line?
Well, the very first place we have to begin is with a good example here at home. We have to protect the religious rights, the religious freedoms of our citizens, and we have to make sure that government is not subject to undue influence, which means anything beyond what any other citizen would have access to, by religious communities. And if we can do that, and if our society prospers, as it always has in the past, I think that is the most important tool that we have in influencing religious freedom in other places. Certainly, if there is threat to life or well-being, then we have to consider non-diplomatic means of intervening.
Ambassador, in terms of there's protection under the First Amendment here in the United States, so you have a right to practice your religion, but then you have the other issue, which might be discrimination. When that discrimination, not necessarily by government, but by other people. How do you look at the issue of freedom of religion and discrimination here in the United States as it relates to Islam?
I look at it very seriously, Greta, because that discrimination can easily convert into pressures on the community, the minority community. It can then enter a slippery slope, which means Muslims today, and as we are seeing Jews tomorrow, anti-Semitism is stirring again, it's raising its ugly head. And where do you stop with that? So I really see a challenge to the idea of religious freedom in this kind of discrimination. Maybe small, but it's dangerous. It must be stopped, because that is the greatest thing that the United States of America gave to the world. I mean, we need to remember, and as a scholar of religion, I'm very conscious of this, and someone committed to interfaith, that America is the first modern nation to actually embody the ideal of religious freedom. In the founding fathers, Reed Jefferson, very inspiring. But that is not a universal value. So a lot of countries, and we are citing them, he just gave, Reverend gave an example, they do not subscribe to that. So we have to make it a success. Otherwise, as the rabbi says, other countries are going to say, you haven't been able to live up to it yourself. How are you telling us to behave in this certain manner?
Well, you've got the situation with your home nation of Pakistan where blasphemy, you get the death penalty if you don't believe. Here in the United States, where we have sort of the other end of the spectrum, is that we say you can believe what you want. Pakistan, nonetheless, is one of our allies in the fight, in the fight against terrorism. But even the Pope, is concerned because a mother of 5 was recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, sentenced to death for being a Catholic. And she's now, that's been suspended the death sentence while she's sitting in prison for 4 or 5 years in solitary confinement. So what do we do about our friends, the Pakistanis, with the blasphemy law?
You have to constantly talk to them, advise them, warn them, remind them of their own ideals, because that is not the spirit with which Pakistan was created, as a homeland which would be open and free to all religions. Read the Constitution, read the behavior of the Founding Fathers. Again, I want to make a point here, a bigger point, which is that I'm noting in South Asia, for example, majority religions tend to persecute minorities. For example, Pakistan, you've given the example of the Christians. In India, is the Hindu majority against the minorities, Christian or Muslim. In Myanmar, we just heard the example, the senator gave the example of the Buddhists with the minority Muslim, and then you flip it around. So that in Egypt, for example, there's persecution against the Christians. We need to understand it's not so much religion as majority versus minority, and we need to be very sensitive to the needs of the minority.
Rabbi, I see you nodding your head.
Absolutely. I think that part of the mistake we make in promoting religious freedom for oppressed minorities is to not make it clear that when those rights are attained for the minority, they're meant to be universal rights and not particular rights for the oppressed minority. That is the strongest thing that we can do. In this country, we have some very small representations of religious traditions. They enjoy exactly the same representations as evangelical Christians, for example.
Rabbi, why is it that it appears, and maybe you can correct me in history, that at the center of so many of our wars and disputes, it's religion. It's Islam, it's Judaism, it's Christianity. I mean, everyone's got a piece of some, whether persecuted or not. But am I right that this religion has thrust us into some very ugly confrontations and deadly for a lot of people?
So as Ambassador Ahmed has pointed out, majority communities in a society are most likely to be the perpetrators of whatever goodness or whatever faults there are. And since religion has defined so many cultures in so many places around the world until recent times, it's not a surprise that the religions that were identified with those countries have been the perpetrators of those atrocities. We believe at Interfaith Alliance, and I know we have many partners who believe as well, in the healing power of religion in society if it is properly practiced, and frankly, if it is not allowed to get into bed with the powers that come with governance.
Pastor, is there any influence by the U.S. government in China with our commitment embodied in the Constitution, the First Amendment, freedom of religion? Does China, when we talk about it, and I realize that your friend has died suspiciously, does it have any impact at all? Are they least bit concerned by our statements about their religious persecution?
Absolutely. I mean, as the rabbi just said, and the ambassador emphasized, religious freedom is a universal human rights. I mean, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 18. And ironically, the Chinese own Communist Constitution in the Article 36 also confirm or verify that the Chinese citizens are supposed to be guaranteed for religious freedom. And yet, China, I think the ruling party with is atheistic ideology imposed on the Chinese citizens. And last year alone, we have documented over 220,000 Christians were persecuted alone. Over 3,700 were arrested and detained. So the U.S. government, of course, has been calling out. I think it's been helpful. Like the State Department yesterday just issued an official statement condemning, raising the issue of Dr. Lee's persecution and his sudden death.
Earlier this week, we asked our Facebook audience to tell us what freedom of religion means to them. And Kathy Rubio Swanson says, tolerance to those that are like me is not tolerance at all. I will vote for those that will defend your right to think differently. Ambassador, how do we get people to be tolerant?
I think, Greta, we need to constantly remind people of the Founding Fathers. Jefferson, for example, focused on religious pluralism. That's what he put on his tombstone. He was most proud of that, not the fact that he was President of the United States. Incredible. That's the vision of the Founding Fathers. Religious pluralism means including people, not including my group or my community and excluding others. That is our challenge. Keep reminding us in America, this is a great ideal, we have to embody it and practice it, or you'll have problems abroad where people are going to see you say one thing and you may do another thing. And I, frankly speaking, am worried. The desecration of Jewish cemeteries, the attacks on Jewish, you saw the Charlottesville